Imagine a painter in his dimly lit studio. Every evening he returns to the same blank canvas, tirelessly adding brushstrokes. He pours his soul into his work, color after color, layer upon layer. But something strange begins to happen. The more effort he puts in, the less he notices the masterpiece taking shape. The hues blur together, the details lose their vibrance. To him, it's just a canvas, always there, always unfinished. It's not until he steps away, truly steps away, that the art reveals its full brilliance. From a distance he sees it clearly, the beauty that was always there, hidden in plain sight. Now, think about your relationships. Are you the painter, overgiving, over-investing, until your presence becomes another blur in the background of someone's life? Or are you the masterpiece, intentionally stepping back, allowing others to see your true value, to crave the light you bring into their world? The truth is, we've all been there. You give and give, thinking your consistency, your reliability, your constant presence will be enough. But what happens? Slowly, you feel overlooked, taken for granted, like a melody played too often to be noticed anymore. And the harder you try to reclaim that spark, the more it seems to slip away. But here's where things get interesting. The answer isn't to give more or do more, it's to pull back. Not out of spite, not as a game, but as a deliberate act of reclaiming your presence. The secret lies in learning the power of absence, the magnetism of unpredictability, and the art of creating space. Not just for others to miss you, but for you to rediscover your own worth. This is where dark psychology meets Stoic wisdom. It's about mastering the subtle interplay between presence and absence, between connection and mystery. It's not manipulation. It's the science of human attention and appreciation. And when you get it right, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing their validation, and instead, they begin to crave your energy, your light, your essence. Because you've shifted from being their constant to being their rarity. But how do you do it? How do you turn the tide and make someone truly value your presence? How do you create a dynamic where they're drawn to you not out of habit, but out of genuine desire? It starts with understanding a fundamental truth about human nature. We don't value what's always available. Like that painter's canvas, the more we see something, the more it blends into the background. But when something or someone becomes scarce, when it steps away, it captures our focus in ways that feel almost magnetic. It disrupts the ordinary and becomes extraordinary. Think about the moon in a night sky. When it's full, it's impossible to ignore, dominating the heavens with its glow. But it doesn't stay full, does it? It waxes and wanes, disappearing entirely at times, only to return and captivate us all over again. Its mystery, its rhythm of presence and absence, makes it unforgettable. Now, imagine becoming that moon in someone's life. You don't need to be the sun, shining constantly, burning yourself out to be noticed. Instead, you learn the art of being present in ways that matter, and absent in ways that leave an echo. This isn't about playing hard to get or manipulating others. It's about becoming intentional with your energy. When you stop being a constant fixture in someone's life and instead show up with purpose and depth, you become a presence they crave, not because you demand it, but because they feel it. They begin to associate your absence with curiosity and your presence with fulfillment. Over the next few minutes, we're going to dive into the exact principles and techniques to make this transformation. From mastering the art of unpredictability to creating emotional anchors that tie people to you on a deeper level, you'll learn how to shift the balance of attention and make your presence feel like a rare, irreplaceable gift. But before we start, take a moment to reflect. Are you ready to reclaim your power? To stop blending into the background of others' lives and become the vibrant, undeniable presence they can't stop thinking about? If the answer is yes, let's begin. Because the moment you master these principles, you'll find yourself standing apart, not as someone easily overlooked, but as someone truly unforgettable. Number 1. Create the shadow effect. Picture this. There's a man in a quiet corner of a crowded cafe, sipping his coffee while he sketches something on a notepad. The details of his face are ordinary, but there's something about him that catches your attention. He doesn't look up, doesn't try to engage with anyone. You can't see what he's drawing, but the focus in his expression, the quiet intensity, makes you wonder, who is he? What's his story? Why does he seem so captivating? Now, imagine the opposite. A person in the same cafe is animated, loud, eager to be noticed. They're oversharing details of their life with anyone who will listen, laughing too loudly, trying too hard. After a while, they become background noise, just another voice in the din. You glance at them once, maybe twice, but then your eyes drift back to the man in the corner. He's not trying to capture your attention, yet somehow he has it entirely. This is the essence of the shadow effect, the art of revealing just enough of yourself to be intriguing while leaving much of your story untold. It's not about being distant or aloof, but about being deliberate with what you share and what you hold back. In a world where everyone is constantly broadcasting every thought, every emotion, every moment, the person who cultivates mystery stands out like a flame in the dark. People are drawn to what they don't fully understand. The more they wonder about you, the more they crave your presence. When you always make yourself fully available, when you lay every thought and feeling on the table, you may think you're building closeness. But in reality, you're giving people no reason to look deeper. Like a book with all its secrets printed on the first page, there's nothing left to explore. The shadow effect flips this dynamic. Instead of being an open book, you become a riddle, a story with missing chapters that others are desperate to read. Think about the people in your life who have left a lasting impression. Are they the ones who shared everything about themselves right away? Or are they the ones who hinted at something more, something you couldn't quite figure out? The shadow effect works because it taps into a universal human desire, the need to solve puzzles, to uncover what's hidden. We don't crave what's obvious. We crave what feels just out of reach. The key to mastering this effect lies in intentionality. It's not about being secretive for the sake of it. Instead, it's about revealing only the parts of yourself that add to your depth, that invite curiosity. For example, if someone asks about your weekend, instead of giving a full play-by-play, you might say, "It was eye-opening. I learned something about myself that surprised me." Then, leave it at that. Don't rush to explain. Let the weight of your words hang in the air. They'll feel compelled to ask more, to dig deeper, because you've left a door slightly ajar. And in that gap, their curiosity will grow. Silence is another powerful tool in the shadow effect. When you don't fill every moment with chatter, you give others room to reflect on you, to wonder what's going through your mind. Imagine a conversation where, instead of responding instantly, you take a moment to pause, letting the silence linger just a beat longer than usual. That silence becomes a space they want to fill, a moment where your presence is felt even more strongly. But the shadow effect isn't just about what you don't say. It's also about how you present yourself. Think of a candle in a dark room. If it burns brightly and steadily, It's comforting, but predictable. But if it flickers, casting shifting shadows, it becomes mesmerizing. People can't help but watch, wondering when it will flare up or dim again. You too can create this flicker by being unpredictable in subtle ways. Be warm and open at times, and introspective and reserved at others. Show different facets of yourself, but never all at once. This keeps people engaged, wanting to see more, to experience the fullness of who you are. As you embrace the shadow effect, remember that it isn't about manipulation or creating distance. It's about honoring your own complexity and inviting others to truly see you, not in one overwhelming flash, but in layers that reveal themselves over time. When you create space for curiosity, you give others the gift of discovery. And in that discovery, they find themselves drawn closer, craving more of the light and depth you bring into their lives. Think of yourself as the moon in a starry sky. Sometimes you shine fully, illuminating everything around you. Other times, you're just a sliver of light, barely visible, but no less captivating. And sometimes you vanish altogether, leaving only the memory of your glow. But each time you return, you're met with awe, because your absence has made your presence even more meaningful. So, are you ready to embrace your own shadow? To become the kind of person others can't help but wonder about, think about, and crave to understand? This is your moment to step into your power. Let them feel your presence, not by giving them everything, but by giving them just enough. If this resonates with you, take a moment to like this video. It helps us continue creating content that inspires and transforms. Subscribe to the channel to keep exploring these life-changing insights. And in the comments below, share your thoughts about the shadow effect. How will you use it to reclaim your presence and create a lasting impact? We'd love to hear from you. Number 2, use the momentum break. Imagine this. You're at a party, deeply engrossed in a conversation with someone who seems to have you completely captivated. Every word they say feels meaningful. Every glance draws you in deeper. But just as the conversation reaches its most interesting point, they glance at their watch, smile warmly and say, "This has been great. I'll have to catch up with you later." And just like that, they're gone. For the rest of the night, your mind keeps drifting back to them. What were they about to say? Why did they leave so suddenly? You feel an inexplicable pull toward them, and you can't help but hope for another moment with them. This is the power of the momentum break in action. It's a subtle yet profoundly effective way to leave others wanting more of your presence. Whether it's in a conversation, a text exchange, or a social interaction, breaking the rhythm at just the right moment creates a sense of intrigue and longing that words alone cannot achieve. The beauty of this technique lies in its simplicity. It's about knowing when to pull back, allowing curiosity to take root in the space you leave behind. We often make the mistake of thinking that more is better. More attention, more availability, more effort to keep the connection alive. But what we fail to realize is that human attention thrives on contrast. Too much of anything, even the most engaging presence, can become predictable, routine, and ultimately undervalued. The key to being truly unforgettable is not in giving endlessly, but in learning to step away at the right time. When you introduce a momentum break, you disrupt the ordinary flow of interaction. This disruption forces the other person to pause, reflect, and, most importantly, desire the continuation of what you've offered. Think of it like reading a thrilling book that ends each chapter with a tantalizing cliffhanger. You're compelled to keep turning the pages, not because the story is over, but because it isn't. Your mind becomes fixated on what comes next, and the absence of closure drives your engagement. The same principle applies to personal connections. If every interaction with you is neatly tied up, if every conversation reaches a predictable conclusion, there's no emotional residue to linger in their mind. But when you step away at a moment of high engagement, leaving them curious and wanting more, you create a powerful emotional hook. Imagine you're messaging someone you care about. The conversation is flowing, the connection feels strong, and it seems natural to keep the dialogue going. But instead of continuing until the conversation fizzles out, you decide to pull back at the peak of engagement. Perhaps you say something like, "This has been great. I'll have to tell you the rest later," or "I'm enjoying this, but I need to step away for now." This isn't about ghosting or playing hard to get. It's about intentionally creating a pause that shifts the dynamic in your favor. The person on the other end is left with a moment of quiet, their thoughts still circling around you, wondering when the thread will pick up again. This technique works because it taps into the psychological power of absence. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. When you're always available, you risk becoming another possession in someone's mental landscape, something they can access at any time. But when you introduce scarcity through a momentum break, you transform their perception. Suddenly, your presence becomes a rare and valuable experience, something they actively crave instead of passively expect. The momentum break is not about manipulation or playing games. It's about reclaiming your presence as something that commands respect and appreciation. By stepping away deliberately, you show others that your time and attention are intentional, not infinite. This subtle shift in dynamic changes the way they see you. You're no longer someone who blends into the background of their life. You're the person who stands out, someone they think about, even in your absence. Over time, as you master this technique, you'll notice how much more impact your presence has. People will begin to anticipate your interactions, savoring each moment with you because they know it's not guaranteed. You'll find that your relationships feel more balanced, more fulfilling, not because you're trying harder, but because you've learned the art of stepping back at the right time. The pause you create isn't an end. It's an opening, a space for curiosity, appreciation, and desire to flourish. So, the next time you feel the urge to overextend, to fill every gap in the interaction, resist it. Instead, introduce a momentum break. Leave a moment of silence, an unfinished thought, or a conversation on a high note. Trust that the space you leave will speak louder than anything you could say or do in that moment. When they think back on the interaction, they'll feel the pull of that unfinished energy, and they'll begin to crave your return. Remember this: the most magnetic presence isn't the one that's constant. It's the one that knows how to create value through absence. You are not an open book to be read in a single sitting. You are a novel, rich with depth and intrigue, best appreciated one chapter at a time. If this technique resonated with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments how you plan to use the momentum break to transform your connections. Your journey to becoming a presence they crave starts now, and we're here to guide you every step of the way. Number 3. Build a signature gesture. It started on a rainy evening in the middle of autumn. Every week, the small cafe on the corner of 5th Street would buzz with the sound of quiet conversations and clinking coffee cups. But this particular evening felt different. Among the usual patrons was a man sitting alone by the window, sketching in a worn leather notebook. He was there every week at the same time, quietly drawing, sipping his coffee, and leaving without saying much to anyone. Yet, somehow, everyone noticed him. The barista remembered his name, customers smiled as they passed his table, and the owner even kept his favorite drink ready before he arrived. He never sought attention, but his presence left a subtle, lasting impression. Why? Because he had created a signature gesture, something simple, consistent and unique to him that made him unforgettable. This concept of a signature gesture isn't limited to chance encounters in a cafe. It's a subtle, yet powerful tool rooted in dark psychology and the principles of Stoicism that can make your presence linger in someone's mind long after you're gone. A signature gesture is something uniquely yours. It's an action, phrase, or habit so distinct and personal that it becomes a mental anchor, tying someone's thoughts back to you in ways they can't explain. Whether it's the way you end every conversation, the specific way you express gratitude, or even a playful inside joke, this small, consistent element becomes your personal mark on their world. Imagine this. You have a friend who always signs off their texts with the phrase, "Until next time." At first, it seems trivial, but over time, you notice how much you associate that phrase with them. When you see or hear it elsewhere, your mind immediately drifts back to them. That's the magic of a signature gesture. It creates a mental loop, an association that keeps you present in someone's thoughts, even when you're not physically there. The brilliance of this technique lies in its simplicity. In a world where most people try to stand out by doing too much, the power of a signature gesture lies in its consistency and authenticity. It doesn't require grand gestures or elaborate performances. Instead, it's about taking something small and making it uniquely yours. Think of someone you admire or remember fondly. Chances are there's something specific about them, a way they greeted you, a distinct laugh, or the thoughtful way they remembered your favorite things. That's their signature gesture, even if they didn't realize it, and it's precisely why you remember them. Now, let's bring this idea closer to home. Imagine you're building a relationship, be it a friendship, romantic connection, or even a professional bond. You could spend hours talking, doing favors, and making efforts to impress. But what if all it took was something as simple as a ritual, a phrase, or a small habit? For example, let's say you always compliment someone in a unique way. Instead of the generic, "You look nice," you notice something specific like, "That color brings out the spark in your eyes." Or perhaps you develop a habit of leaving behind a handwritten note after visiting someone, thanking them for their time. These tiny, thoughtful actions begin to build an emotional association with your presence, making you stand out in a way that feels natural and unforced. One of the most powerful aspects of a signature gesture is how it intertwines with the principles of Stoicism. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what we can control and to act with intention. A signature gesture is a deliberate act of self-expression. It's a way to leave a piece of yourself with someone without needing to demand their attention or validation. It's not about being flashy or dramatic. It's about creating a quiet ripple in someone's life that keeps their mind circling back to you. Let's take it a step further. A signature gesture doesn't just anchor your presence in someone's thoughts. It also builds emotional security. When someone consistently experiences the same small but meaningful gesture from you, it creates a sense of trust and familiarity. They begin to look forward to it, even crave it, because it becomes a part of their emotional routine. like a favorite song or a comforting scent, your gesture becomes something they associate with positive feelings, making your presence not just memorable, but irreplaceable. The key to this technique is authenticity. Your gesture should reflect who you genuinely are, not something you fabricate just to impress. If you force it, the gesture will lose its charm and come across as insincere. Think of the artist in the cafe. He wasn't trying to create a signature gesture. It was simply an extension of who he was, a quiet, thoughtful presence that left an unspoken mark on those around him. Now ask yourself, what is your signature gesture? Maybe it's a unique way of saying goodbye, a thoughtful habit of remembering small details about people, or even a distinct way you express humor. Whatever it is, lean into it. Let it become your subtle calling card, the thing that makes people smile when they think of you. Because when you create something so uniquely yours, you ensure that no one else can replicate the space you occupy in someone's mind. Remember, the greatest connections aren't built on grand acts or fleeting moments of attention. They're built on the small, intentional things that linger, that become part of someone's everyday world in a way that's both comforting and captivating. So, start small, be consistent, and watch as your signature gesture transforms the way others perceive and crave your presence. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what your signature gesture could be, or perhaps one you've already mastered. Share it in the comments below, and let's inspire each other to embrace this powerful tool. And if you found value in this video, please take a moment to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who could use these insights. Together, we're building a community of people who understand their worth and step into the power of their presence. Let's keep growing, one meaningful connection at a time. Number 4. Practice strategic silence. There was a man who lived in a small village, known not for his words, but for his profound silence. While others filled the air with chatter, his quiet demeanor seemed to hold more weight than the loudest voices in the room. Villagers would often seek him out, not because he had all the answers, but because his silence made them think, made them question, and most importantly, made them crave his perspective. When he did choose to speak, his words were like drops of rain in a desert, refreshing, rare, and impactful. It wasn't that he had mastered speaking, it was that he had mastered the art of silence. His absence of words created a presence that was impossible to ignore. In a world overflowing with noise, the power of silence is often underestimated. We rush to fill every moment, every conversation, every interaction with words, believing that the more we say, the more will be heard. But here's the truth: silence can be louder than words. Strategic silence is not about retreating into isolation or playing games with others' emotions. It's about understanding that in certain moments, saying nothing speaks volumes. When you embrace silence with purpose, you create space. Space for curiosity, for reflection, and for your presence to be truly felt. Think about the times when silence has captivated you. Perhaps it was a moment when someone paused during an emotional conversation, and the absence of words hung heavy in the air, drawing you closer. Or a moment when someone didn't rush to reply, making you wonder what they were thinking. Silence, when used intentionally, doesn't push people away. It pulls them in. It's an invisible force that amplifies your presence by creating a sense of mystery and depth. The power of silence lies in its ability to make people reflect. When you stop filling every gap with explanations or reassurances, you leave room for others to engage with their own thoughts. They begin to wonder, why are they quiet? What are they thinking? Are they upset, intrigued, planning something? This uncertainty is magnetic. It keeps their mind on you, even when you're not speaking. You've become a puzzle they want to solve, a quiet enigma that occupies their thoughts long after the interaction is over. Strategic silence also allows your words to carry more weight. Imagine a speaker who talks incessantly without pause. Eventually, their voice becomes background noise. Now picture someone who speaks sparingly, choosing their moments carefully. Every word they say feels significant because it breaks the silence. Their presence feels intentional, deliberate, and commanding. That's the power you harness when you embrace silence. You become the person whose words matter because they aren't constant. People lean in when you speak because they've learned that when you do, it's worth listening. This technique is especially effective in relationships, whether personal or professional. If you're constantly the one reaching out, explaining, or filling every void in the conversation, you may find that your efforts go unnoticed. Over time, your presence might be taken for granted, not out of malice, but simply because it's always there. By practicing silence strategically, you disrupt this pattern. You show that your energy is not endless, that your attention is not a given. You create space for others to notice your absence, to reflect on your value, and to miss what you bring into their lives. Silence can also be a tool for self-respect. It reminds you that you don't need to over-explain or overextend yourself to be understood. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Silence is a lesson in itself." When you choose silence, you're asserting your confidence. You're saying, "I don't need to fight for attention. My presence is enough." This quiet strength is deeply attractive. It shows others that you value yourself, which in turn makes them value you even more. Picture this scenario. You've just had a meaningful conversation with someone, but instead of continuing to talk or following up immediately, you let the conversation breathe. You don't rush to send a text or follow up with more thoughts. You give them time to sit with your words, to feel your absence. In that silence, your presence grows louder. They start to think about what you said, about what you might be doing, about the space you've left in their day. That silence becomes your presence, occupying their mind in a way constant communication never could. The beauty of strategic silence is that it doesn't require grand gestures or complicated tactics. It's simply about knowing when to step back, when to pause, and when to let others come to you. It's about trusting that your worth doesn't need to be proven with constant words or actions. Your silence speaks for itself, becoming a bridge that draws people closer, rather than a wall that keeps them away. So ask yourself, how often do you give others the gift of your silence? How often do you step back and allow them to feel your absence, to miss your presence? When you learn to embrace strategic silence, you stop chasing validation and start commanding attention. You become the person who doesn't just fill a room with noise, but leaves a lasting impression with quiet confidence. This is your opportunity to reclaim your presence, to become the person whose silence speaks louder than words, whose absence is felt as deeply as their presence. Start small, pause during conversations, take a step back when you feel the urge to over-communicate, and trust in the power of stillness. You'll find that the quieter you become, the more they'll crave what you bring into their life. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this technique in the comments below. How do you plan to practice strategic silence in your life? Let's start a conversation that doesn't just inspire, but transforms. Together, we can master the art of presence and absence and become truly unforgettable. Number 5. Master emotional contrasts. Picture a bustling marketplace in an ancient city. Among the crowd, a lone storyteller sits beneath a canopy, weaving a tale. His voice shifts with every word, sometimes soft, lulling the crowd into a sense of comfort, and at other times sharp and commanding, startling them awake. The story isn't just about what he says, but how he says it. The rhythm, the highs and lows, the moments of suspense and the bursts of joy keep the crowd captivated, hanging on his every word. They're not there just for the story. They're there for the emotions he makes them feel. That storyteller doesn't just hold their attention, he owns it. Now think about your own relationships. Are you that storyteller, keeping people engaged with emotional contrasts that make them crave your presence? Or are you the steady, unchanging hum in the background, easy to overlook because your energy always feels the same? Emotional contrasts, the intentional interplay of warmth and challenge, comfort and curiosity, are what make you memorable, magnetic, and deeply desirable. They are what turn an ordinary connection into an unforgettable bond. Humans are wired to remember intensity. Think about the last great conversation you had. It likely wasn't a monotonous exchange of pleasantries. It was a roller coaster of emotions, laughter, surprise, reflection. That ebb and flow is what leaves a lasting imprint. When you master emotional contrasts, you tap into this primal truth. You give people the thrill of unpredictability while grounding them in moments of deep connection. You become the person they can't stop thinking about because you've taken them on an emotional journey they can't replicate with anyone else. Imagine a candlelit dinner with a friend. One moment, you're sharing a heartfelt story that makes them feel seen and understood. In the next, you playfully tease them about something, breaking the intensity with a spark of humor. The emotional shift doesn't confuse them. It engages them. It's like music. A song that stays on the same note is boring, but one that shifts between melody and harmony is unforgettable. Emotional contrasts work the same way. They add depth and texture to your interactions, making your presence irresistible. This isn't about being manipulative or playing with someone's feelings. It's about being authentically multidimensional. People crave what feels real, and no one is one-dimensional. By showing the full spectrum of your emotions, your warmth, your wit, your moments of strength, and your moments of vulnerability, you become someone worth knowing deeply. You stop being predictable and start being intriguing, the kind of person they want to figure out, to spend more time with, to crave. The key to emotional contrasts is subtlety. You don't need to swing wildly from one emotion to the next. It's about creating a natural rhythm, like waves on the shore, sometimes soft, sometimes strong, but always pulling them closer. Start by tuning into the energy of the moment. If someone is feeling down, meet them there with empathy and understanding. But don't stay there too long. Lift them up with humor or encouragement. If a conversation feels too light, add depth by asking a thought-provoking question. These subtle shifts keep the interaction dynamic and engaging. Think about a time when someone truly captivated you. Maybe it was a teacher who alternated between inspiring you and challenging you to think harder, or a friend who could be both deeply supportive and refreshingly honest. Those are the people who stay with us, not because they were always kind or always funny, but because they showed us different sides of themselves. They gave us something to feel, to remember, to crave. This is where Stoicism meets dark psychology. Stoicism teaches us to remain grounded in our own sense of worth, to find balance within ourselves rather than seeking it from others. Emotional contrasts build on that foundation by making you more than just steady. They make you compelling. When you're warm, your steadiness creates safety. When you challenge someone, your self-assuredness makes it feel constructive rather than critical. People crave that balance. The comfort of knowing you're grounded and the thrill of never quite knowing what emotional layer you'll reveal next. Imagine being like the moon, waxing and waning. Sometimes your presence is soft and glowing, a comforting guide in the darkness. Other times it's sharp and striking, commanding attention. That balance of predictability and mystery is what makes the moon so captivating, and it's what will make people crave your presence in the same way. When you master emotional contrasts, you become the person who's not just there, but felt deeply. You're the one they talk about long after you've left, replaying your words, your energy, your essence in their minds. Your presence lingers like a favorite melody, one they want to hear again and again. It's not because you're louder or more dramatic than anyone else. It's because you've shown them something rare, the beauty of emotional depth and the thrill of emotional unpredictability. So, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue to play it safe, remaining in the background, easy to forget? Or will you step into the full power of who you are, embracing the emotional contrasts that make you unique? You have the power to create connections that are vibrant, memorable, and impossible to ignore. People won't just want to be around you, they'll need to be around you, because you're the only one who makes them feel this way. If this resonated with you, if you're ready to step into the spotlight of your own life and create the connections you deserve, take action now. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this technique in the comments. Let us know how you'll use emotional contrasts to transform your relationships. Your presence is your power. Make them crave it. Number 6. Offer rare intellectual energy. Imagine a quiet cafe on a rainy afternoon. You're sitting across from someone, sipping your coffee as the world outside melts into a blur of falling raindrops. The conversation starts predictably enough. Work, weather, the usual surface-level exchanges. But then, something shifts. You ask a question, not the kind that gets a polite answer, but one that makes them stop, tilt their head, and think. What's one belief you held 5 years ago that you no longer agree with? Their eyes light up, and suddenly the energy between you changes. The words start flowing, ideas intertwining like vines. That moment, that spark, is what happens when you offer rare intellectual energy. A presence so stimulating, so rare, it becomes unforgettable. In a world where most interactions feel like scrolling through a newsfeed, superficial, repetitive and fleeting, being the person who sparks curiosity and deep thought is like being an oasis in a desert. People crave depth, even if they don't realize it. We're wired to seek out novelty and challenge, to feel engaged and alive in the presence of something or someone different. When you become that source of intellectual nourishment, you're not just another person in their life. You're the person who makes them feel awake, inspired, and connected to something bigger than themselves. Rare intellectual energy isn't about showing off your knowledge or dominating conversations. It's about inviting others into a space where their thoughts and ideas can breathe. It's about being the kind of person who asks questions no one else does, who listens in a way that makes them feel seen, and who offers perspectives that linger in their minds long after the conversation ends. Picture it. Someone walking home after meeting you, replaying your words, grappling with the ideas you introduced, and feeling a pull to seek you out again, not because you demanded their attention, but because you sparked something in them that no one else could. This is where Stoic principles intersect beautifully with the art of connection. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you introduce ideas that challenge and expand someone's inner world, you're not just having a conversation, you're leaving an imprint on their soul. By being intentional with your energy, by bringing depth to every interaction, you become a kind of intellectual lighthouse, guiding others to a space where they feel curious, alive, and deeply understood. Consider this. The next time you're in a conversation, resist the temptation to skim the surface. Instead of asking about their weekend plans, try something unexpected. What's something you've always wanted to learn but never tried? Or, what's a moment from your life that changed the way you see the world? These aren't questions for the sake of being different. They're doorways into meaningful exchanges that set you apart. When you make someone think, when you make them feel something beyond the ordinary, they associate that experience with you. And in a sea of forgettable interactions, you become the rare, shimmering light they can't ignore. This approach isn't about being intense or overly serious. It's about balance, mixing thoughtfulness with playfulness, seriousness with curiosity. You don't need to have all the answers. In fact, the beauty lies in the shared exploration. When you create a space where someone feels safe to share their dreams, fears, and ideas, you forge a connection that transcends the ordinary. And that's what makes your presence irresistible. Not the words you say, but the way you make them feel alive in your company. So, ask yourself, are you the person who leaves others feeling invigorated and inspired? Or are you blending into the monotony of their daily routine? Rare intellectual energy isn't something you force. It's something you embody by being genuinely curious, engaged, and present. It's about realizing that your words and thoughts have the power to elevate others, to make them crave the unique energy only you bring. You are capable of being the spark that lights up someone's mind, the person they look forward to hearing from, the presence they can't help but miss. Claim this power and watch as the dynamic shifts, not because you're louder or flashier, but because you've become the kind of person they can't replace. If this resonates with you, if you're ready to become that unforgettable presence in someone's life, take the first step. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this technique in the comments. Let's build a community of people who bring meaning and depth to every interaction. You have the power to be the difference someone craves. Let's start today.